him as a silly question. "But I don't think Tom would be home, and he lives alone. First responders will be on their way shortly." Peter took a deep breath to steady his nerves and then sped up as he neared Tom's farm. Peter was right. He could see the source of the smoke as soon as he turned the corner past the trees and arrived at the bridge over Yellowgrass Creek. Tom Pearson's hog barn was on fire. The smoke was thick, too thick to get an immediate sense of how big the fire itself was. He knew that the amount of smoke did not necessarily indicate the size of the fire, but still, this looked like a big one. Barn fires were not uncommon, but why an explosion? The manure pit. There had been a massive hog barn explosion 2 years ago near Altona because of methane buildup in a manure pit, combined with some poorly considered welding work. But Tom was careful and smart, and Tom would not be there doing any welding or anything else that could generate a spark, because he was always at Rita's coffee shop in New Selfos by 7:45 at the latest, except on Saturdays and Sundays. And it wasn't a Saturday or a Sunday. It was a Tuesday. Peter skidded to a stop in the farmyard and yanked the truck's door open. The pigs. Those poor pigs. There were no other vehicles in the yard. Tom's might have been in the garage, but there's no way he would have slept through the explosion. Tom must be at Rita's, as Peter had assumed. It was up to Peter to save the pigs. He jogged a few steps toward the barn before he hit an invisible, pulsating wall of extreme heat. He couldn't force his way through it. There was no way. He realized that he had probably parked the truck too close, so he jumped back into the cab and reversed 20 meters at high speed to the far side of the yard. Then he got out and stared at the unfolding catastrophe. Flames were now shooting out of all the barn windows. A door on the east side of the barn appeared to have been blown out by the force of the initial explosion, creating a cone-shaped blast pattern in the snow toward an aspen bluff that the pigs were sometimes pastured in. Fortunately, this was away from the house and the other outbuildings, which were across the yard to the west. Then, with a suddenness that made Peter jump, the roof collapsed in a deafening boom, sending fiery embers straight up into the air as if from a squat prairie volcano. Peter was glad that he had moved the truck. Tom's hog barn wasn't one of those modern, fully sealed, high-tech, steel-clad pork shop factories, but rather an old wooden one, repurposed for his pasture pig project. Only in January in Manitoba there is no pasture, so the pigs need a cozy, straw-filled refuge out of the wind and the snowdrifts. Old wood plus dry straw equals tinderbox. This was going to be nothing but ash and char in a matter of minutes. Those poor pigs. Peter had known some of them personally. They all had names. 54 of them, if he remembered correctly. And Peter usually remembered correctly. He got out of the truck again, slower this time, and leaned heavily on the hood, unable to take his eyes off the conflagration, unable to think of anything else to do. The only sound came from the fire, a crescendo and decrescendo of roars and crackles, following some complex infernal rhythm. Even the crows were silent. 6 of them roosted in the big elm with the tire swing beside the porch, all 6 watching the fire with intense interest. Normally they would be cawing at Peter, but not today. Peter had left his gloves in the truck, so he put his hands into the parka pockets and drew in a deep breath. Peter wondered who would arrive first. He hoped it would be his brother-in-law, Kevin. He often felt self-conscious around people he knew less well. He was well aware that his arms seemed slightly too long for his already long frame, and that his head stuck forward, as if he was peering at something. In fact, it was likely the result of a lifetime of ducking and stooping. This gangly effect was enhanced when he moved, which made him look like he was still learning how to use his body. Graceful was not a word that was often, if ever, applied to him. His dark brown hair was usually unruly, too, so well-groomed was another word that was not often applied to him. He knew that it was a joke among his friends to begin describing him to someone as tall, dark, and trailing off so that the listener would helpfully insert the customary completion of that phrase. "No, not that," they would say. "Definitely not that." Peter